I had a potential client reach out to me through Instagram, and her question or concern was she is selling a house in DC. She wants to move to Lexington, Kentucky, and she's like, how do I do both at the same time? I guess when she moved into the house that she has currently in DC, that it was a really chaotic experience. They had to live in a hotel for a few weeks. The whole thing just sounded really messy. And so essentially how to avoid that, there are many options. Not every way is going to be perfectly seamless. Not every way is going to be smooth sailing, but there are things that you can do and put into place to avoid having to live in a hotel for a few weeks or anything crazy like that. Here's what I told her. I told her that the first thing that she needs to do 110% is to get pre-approved by a local lender where she wants to move to. So in that case, it would be Lexington, Kentucky. I set her up with a couple local lenders that I know. The reason I say local is because they're going to have a better finger on the pulse of this current market. They're going to be able to advise her better when she says, my monthly budget, I want to stay under $2,500, let's just say. They can say, okay, we're going to take that with the current market that we have here, and we're going to break down between your income, your credit score, all of that good stuff, what that housing price is going to look like for you to purchase. So that's step one. The reason for that is because if she starts looking for homes here that she maybe can't afford per the pre-approval, then she's going to be real disappointed when that pre-approval comes through. On the other side, if we're looking at stuff that she thinks she has a hard budget of, but she can actually go higher, well, then that opens up a whole new sphere of things that we can actually look at. First step is pre-approval. This honestly just sets the foundation for a successful transaction, especially when you're trying to sell one and move to the other. In her case, her purchase is going to be contingent upon the sale of her home. That might not be the case for you. That might not be the case for everybody. Some people can't afford 2 mortgages at once, or they can keep that home while buying another one, and then they can sell that one later. There's a lot of different scenarios out there. So in this scenario, I'm talking you have to sell your home in order to buy your new one. In order to do this, she's moving from DC to Lexington. First step is pre-approval. Second step is getting her in touch with a solid realtor in her area. The reason I say solid is because not all realtors are created equal. We want to make sure that she is set up with someone who understands what a relocation looks like. She needs to be able to be, or he needs to be able to be creative in that aspect, because in the transition, which we'll talk about in just a second, there are a lot of moving parts, and you have to be able to kind of massage the deal, understand when you get a contract what needs to be changed in order for everything to be smooth sailing. So realtor matters. Getting her connected to someone that understands a relocation in her area. The first step in listing your home, obviously you want to make sure it's marketed really well so that it sells, but there's a couple things that you want your agent to put in your notes. If they're a relocation agent, they should 100% already know this, but this is a great interview question if you're looking at different agents to relocate to a different state. Number one, in those notes, you want to be sure to ask for a post-occupancy. A post-occupancy is when you close on the home that you're selling, you get to actually stay in that home for a certain time frame. So let's just call it 2 weeks. You ask for a post-occupancy of 2 weeks, which means, let's say you close on March 1st, you are not moving out of the house until March 15th. This gives you a 2-week buffer to where you can move all of your stuff from that house to the new state. The buyer then gets the keys on March 15th. At closing, the buyer technically owns the house. So you no longer own the house. You are just staying there for a short time frame, whatever that might be, to be able to kind of move your stuff and not have it so stressful. This helps tremendously. I will warn you, not all buyers are open to this, but if you're in a competitive market, and especially when you're asking for it up front when they go into the deal knowing that that's what you want, typically if they really want the house, they'll be okay with it. The insurance is still on the house, so it covers everything in that aspect. Some buyers might require you to cover the mortgage in that time frame, so they're not paying for a house that they can't live in. But like I said, every scenario is going to be different. So you want to make sure that you ask for a post-occupancy. You might go ahead and just ask for 3 weeks, knowing you can move out in 2, but giving yourself a little bit of buffer. Step 1, when you list your house, go ahead and have your agent put it in the agent notes that you need a post-occupancy of X timeframe. Second of all, I would highly recommend, if you list your house and you have not found a house to buy yet in the new state, that you ask for a longer closing. A longer closing is anywhere from 60 to 90 days. Typical closing is anywhere from 30 to 45. This would be 60 to 90. It just, if you haven't found a house yet, it gives you a little bit of breathing room to continue your search, find something that you love without having the looming pressure of a 30 to 45 day closing date of your original house looming upon you. Off the jump, and this is in the listing, not that the public sees, but that agents see, you want to make sure that you're asking for a post-occupancy and you're asking for a longer closing time frame. And you can discuss, with your agent what they think a good closing time frame would be. Why do you put this in the agent notes? Because you want to make sure the buyer understands that needs to go in the contract from the jump. You don't want to get to 2 weeks out from closing and be like, oh, by the way, we need a longer closing and we would really like to be able to stay in the house a couple more weeks. The buyer's going to say, heck no, I want to move into my new house. So make sure that off the jump in the listing, that is noted, and make sure that that's in the contract that you get on your house. When you're looking for the new home in the new state, you also want to ask for a longer closing. So let's say you're looking for houses and you find one that you love, you put an offer in. Ideally, when you're looking for a new house, your home that you're selling is already pending. That makes your offer on the new house more competitive. Not to say that a buyer's not going to accept a contingent contract, but if you're in multiple offers or you're competing for a house purchase, most likely the seller's going to say no if you're contingent and your house is not already pending. So step 1 in this process is 100% to start the listing process so that when you find a home that you fall in love with, that your house is already hopefully under contract, and so that your offer for the new house is competitive. Okay, so you find a house that you love and your house is under contract and you have asked for a longer closing on your house and a longer closing on your new house, so everything is a little bit chill. This also alleviates stress if for some reason on the house that you're buying, the inspection comes back really bad and you have to back out, or the appraisal comes back really low or something like that. If there's a hiccup in your buying process, the longer closing on your house sale actually is helpful. So one tip that I do give is when you're selling your house, you find your new house, don't immediately say to your buyers on your house, oh, we can actually move up that closing. You really don't want to tell them that you can move up closing until your inspection and appraisal is done and over with, so that you know that you're 100% closing on that house. When you get your new home or when you're under contract on your new home, you've already asked for a longer closing. Closing on your new house, you don't have to be there. Fun fact. Now, that is a Lexington, Kentucky rule. I'm not going to speak for all states. I know that in Kentucky, you can do what's called a mail-away closing, where they put all the docs together. The title company puts all the docs together. They send it to where you are. Let's just call it, in this client's case, they're sending it to DC. She will find a notary in DC. They'll sign all their docs in DC, and then she'll overnight them back in time for the closing of her house. Now, me as her realtor, I will go to the closing. I will pick up the keys. I will get any docs that she might need to have in person. And then when she drives in, flies in, I have all that ready to give to her for them to move into their new house. If you're like, oh my God, well, we're closing on this house, or we can't buy a trip out there and to close, don't worry. You can do a mail away. So that's not a big deal at all. That's really the gist. Let's go through some things if not all of that goes exactly according to plan. First of all, if you list your house and it's sitting on the market and you're like, oh, this house is not selling, there's a couple things to do here. First of all, houses don't sell in this market if they're marketed poorly, if they're overpriced, or if the value is not there for the buyer. You need to change one of those things. If it's marketed poorly, you need to get with your realtor and say, what the heck are you doing? Don't be afraid to say, what are you doing? How are you marketing my house? That would probably be my step one. Step two, look at that price point. Are you being reasonable? I like to not only look at past sales, but look at your current competition in the market. If you're asking $500,000 for your house, look at the market and say, what else can these buyers get for $500,000? If all of the other houses in your market that are up for sale just seem way cooler than yours, you probably need to lower your price. You're probably a little bit high. So that's an option. Every time you lower your price, you actually draw buyers back in because typically they get a notification that that price has dropped on Zillow, Realtor.com, all of those kinds of sites. And agents get a notification, or it goes on what's called the hot sheet on our MLS. Dropping the price, a couple reasons, gets people attention, and your house is probably too much. In addition to that, if the marketing is fixed and the price is fixed and still people are just not coming to see your house, you kind of need to look at the value that the house has. And I mean a couple different things by this. One, what's your house smell like? That is, people can't smell pictures. So if your house looks awesome in pictures and they get in and it smells like dog or cat or smoke, that's a problem. What's it smell like? What's it look like when you get inside? Is it clean? Are the beds made? Is the trash taken out? When you have people showing, you want it to show really well. You want to make sure that the house is presenting well. There's ways to fix smell, and you can hire people to clean. So both those are easy fixes. Lastly, which is not such an easy fix, if it's super outdated compared to everything else in your market, you might look into doing a couple small updates throughout the home to draw those eyes back in. Remember, if you do updates, take that house off the market, do the updates. When you go to put it back on, get new pictures. That kind of gives it a fresh appeal to buyers. Those are my 3 little tidbits. So if house is not selling, look internally, fix your issues, and then come back to it. When you're listing your house, if you find a buyer who's ready to rock and roll and they say no to a post-occupancy, that can be really challenging. I've only had that happen a couple times where a buyer said, absolutely not, I don't want the liability. I do not want someone living in my house that I don't really know. It's a fair point, but I really don't see it all that often. But if they refuse a post-occupancy, to be honest, the hardest answer to that is they might not be the buyer for you, because that's going to put a lot of pressure on your timeline to buy. That's up to you. If you want to play hardball, you say that's a non-negotiable, but just you got to be prepared to lose that buyer. The other side to that, if your buyer on your house is refusing a post-occupancy, the other thing you can do is on the new home that you're buying, if you're already under contract or you've already found something, you can ask them for a pre-occupancy. It's rare that people allow this, but you can always shoot your shot. What that means is on the home that you're buying, you say, hey, I'm moving out of this house and my buyers are refusing a post-occupancy. Is there any way that I could move into the house a week early before closing on that house? Now, again, if it were me, I probably would say no. So be prepared for them to say no. I also have had a couple instances where they, feel for you. And so in that case, they say, go ahead, you can move in a week early. If they say, I'm really not comfortable with you moving in a week early, but you can park your U-Haul in the driveway, that's a great option too. You can put your stuff in the garage, park your U-Haul in the driveway, and maybe you stay with a friend. Maybe you do rent a hotel or an Airbnb for the week, something like that. So that's always an option. And I will say, if your buyer is being a turd and refusing to give you a post-occupancy on your house, ask them, okay, if we can't live in our house and we have to move into this house and we need a time frame, you get to pay for my Airbnb. I've done that before. Sometimes that gives them an extra push to say, okay, fine, just stay in the house. So that is an option too. You can have them cover your hotel or your Airbnb expense. Again, you ideally want this all from the jump, or you want this during negotiations. You really don't want to deal with this 2 weeks prior to closing. It will make everything so much more stressful. So those are the 2 things that I see. If your house isn't selling or if your buyer refuses a post-oc, that is what will make this process a little more stressful. But again, everything is always fixable. There are always ways to slice and dice a deal, as long as you're doing it on the front end and as long as you're prefacing all of this to the buyer or to the seller on the front and being really open and honest with the situation. typically it works out pretty well. Where things get really gray area and messy is middle of the deal. Oh, by the way, we need 2 weeks after closing. That's going to piss a lot of people off, so don't do that. But that's pretty much the gist. Get a pre-approval in the new state, list your house, price it well, ask for a longer closing, ask for a post-occupancy off the jump. For your new home, ask for a longer closing. Make sure it's contingent on the successful sale of your home. When you go to close on your new home, you'll do a mail away. You'll have a post-occupancy on your house. You'll mail the docs back, you'll own the new house, and then you'll move into your new house. It's really not that simple, but it's really not that messy either. If you have good agents on both sides, I guarantee you it's not that crazy.